Hello and welcome to Epic Loot Radio, the first podcast of 2022. And joining us, we got a roundtable to talk about the games, the MMOs, everything we're excited about with this coming year. Now, I'm going to be introducing these guys one at a time, but note that you should go and check all of their content out, and their links will also be in the description as well of these videos and in the MP3 audio form. We'll start with Rory Khan, then we've got Vulcan, and joining us for the first time on Epic Loot Radio, breaking his 2-year fast of podcast appearances, Force Gaming. Welcome. Let's start with you, Force. Why don't you go ahead and tell people who you are? So that way, if I'm introducing you guys to Force Gaming, then I honestly have had the best day of my life. Force, the floor is yours.
What am I supposed to say? You just gave me, I'm Force Gaming. That's my introduction.
That's all you need to know.
I make YouTube videos. Sometimes they're good. Other times they're not. And I don't know. I'm not going to go into my whole history, but nowadays I do a lot of just PC gaming coverage in general, because that's where my heart is. And I think that's where I should just focus on.
That's important.
And I cover MMOs a lot in particular, just because that is my Achilles heel, and in terms of genre for gaming, it's just so good. Even though as we discussed in our non-official start to the live stream starting, I don't usually play any individual MMO, which is like heresy in the genre. But
it's harder as a
I don't play any
to do that.
Yeah, I just because I don't dedicate to one game anymore. I've like gone up and down with so many games in terms of their popularity over times, but that also just my personal interest. Like I just don't care to just stick with one game anymore. So I usually play like a lot of different MMOs and other games, but mostly MMOs, kind of going back and forth. Every year I usually try to revisit at least a handful, if not all of like the big ones like ESO, Guild Wars. Final Fantasy 14 is still the one that I've never dove into. It's such a hurdle to jump, but I will at some point. Don't worry, I know.
No, we'll probably end up talking a little bit about that. No, not at all. Like a lot of the thing with 14, it becomes its own conversation about people going and playing it. And when people go in with if they think that it's something else, if they think that it's I'll say this, and I know I get a lot of hate from the 14 community because I've always phrased 14 as it's a Final Fantasy game that is built on top of an MMO world. Final Fantasy 14 is not an MMO. However, it is kind of like, hey, and if you like the MMO, maybe you'll stick around afterwards. But that's going to be very interesting to see how it develops, of course, over this year and then the future. And Yoshi P himself will actually talk to the community about like the future of the game in February. But if you like Final Fantasy games, you're probably going to like it. If you like story-driven RPGs, you're probably going to have a blast. If you don't publish your real name out in the world, because I'm not gonna lie, like the community could get quite a little persnickety about that. And when I say that, obviously the minority, the vocal minority. We'll keep putting hopefully minority on that tag, and hopefully it doesn't one day become the majority, because that'd be kind of dangerous. Rory Khan, you've been here as a guest before. We just talked about our Endwalker expressions. Or whatever, our review, whatever you want to call it, impressions. Thank you. Just yesterday, but you're obviously as part of the pre-show talking about Monster Hunter Rise. What games are you playing right now, and what you got going on?
I'm playing Monster Hunter Rise and Final Fantasy 14 mostly. I've actually been doing a lot of the crafting quests. It's like I don't want to do end game crafting, but I like doing just the crafting quests that take you along the way. But that's what I've been doing. And obviously I'm looking forward to Elden Ring coming up in February. That's like one of my big things this year. I'm going to be playing through Rise, and then eventually in spring, Sunbreak, which is the Rise expansion that is upcoming. Somewhere in between there, I hope to check out Lost Ark as well, because I liked what I've played of the beta. I opted not to play more than I think about 10 hours or so. So in order to prevent burnout, because, it's that thing of like, oh, so you play the beta now and then you play the game when it comes out and all of that. But yeah, I'm curious about that. And there's another game that's going to be coming out this year that I'm really curious to see, which is Project Relink. But yeah, not a whole lot is known.
Is that through the Grand Blue thing?
Yeah, the Grand Blue thing.
Yeah. Because I've been when watching, and it's like, it's
coming out this year.
Sure, I'll believe it when it happens.
Supposedly, yeah, we'll
see. That's the funniest thing about like release dates. Somebody, I think, like wholeheartedly was like, no, Brian, you're wrong. Ashes of Creation's coming out in 2021. Who
That's
are
funny.
you? Like, it's like
that. See,
Wait,
you were
really
talking about
that.
not me.
No way.
Like, literally,
Oh,
like somebody was legitimately was like
No, listen,
telling me
Brian.
I was wrong because I was like, at a minimum 2023, at a minimum.
Oh yeah.
You could say 2030, and I still wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not a Square Enix game. Square Enix uses like, hey, we're announcing this Kingdom Hearts, 4, and you can expect it by 2040.
It's like, listen, you know how you were talking about stand up before we started the show proper? That guy should go do stand up. It's like, oh, it's 1,000% 2021. Yeah, sure thing.
Be there.
Just like Star Citizen, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Tomorrow.
I'm the world's worst bad predictor of release dates. Oh man, Vulcan, man, you haven't been on the show in a while. I know we've all been busy, but also Vulcan joining the fatherhood crew. We ended up having a dad's cast on accident, like just when
congratulations.
Thank you.
And obviously, we've got a lot in common, but you obviously, I know I've been seeing a lot of your Lost Ark vids and stuff, and this guy makes excellent videos, guys. So tell people what you're working on, what you're excited about for this year, and then we'll dive into the full show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, this year is it's packed. February is going to be rough. Yeah, Elden Ring. You have Tiny Tina's Wonderland's coming in March. You have Lost Ark. I mean, you name it, it's going to be there. Dying Light too. So because I'm a dad now, I don't have all the time in the world that I used to. So having to kind of cut some of those out a little bit. But right now it's Lost Ark. Lost Ark is kind of my focus. And I've been playing, the Russian version over the past couple of years, a little bit of the Korean version when it very first launched, which was an interesting experience. So
it was interesting getting an account because I was like,
it was very interesting.
I played the Korean edition. It was like, all right, like hopefully I didn't just hand somebody money and then they just say sucks to suck.
Yeah, it's like I'm waiting on a text message from somebody. But yeah, so it was rough. I was like, this is crazy. But really that's kind of the big one. And I'm still covering New World as it kind of comes out with some big updates, things like that. So really kind of like what Forrest was talking about. I've always been somebody that's just like a lot of variety in terms of games. It's really hard for me to like stick with like one particular game for a long period of time. So it's just, create a bunch of content, enjoy the game. As long as I'm having a good time, I'll cover it. And then we'll kind of switch and check out some other stuff as well. So definitely a variety.
There's a theme that you guys kind of all hit on, and it's essentially like variety is kind of a key to life and happiness and flavor. Over the last couple of years, and I've seen this kind of die down, and so I don't know if YouTube has changed more things, but there was this like wave, and maybe it still exists, and maybe I'm just kind of like ignoring it, so YouTube's not feeding it to me. But we've seen this massive trend on hating on games and just like dumping on games. Like, I've played this game for 5,000 hours and it sucks. I've seen these comments. I've played this game for 10,000 hours and this sucks. And
that's Monster Hunter Rise in a nutshell. It's like people like, I can't believe this game only has 200 hours of content and I'm already done with it. And I was like,
what's that?
you paid $60, you got 200 hours and somehow it's bad. Okay.
It's a great deal. That's basically an hour of dinner some places. So it's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true depending on the dinner that you're going to. So my question to the panel here is that what's the most amount of time that you put in any one game? And is that a game that you still frequently return to, or did you hit a burnout point naturally just based off the a pure time? So what's the most time you spend in any particular one game for us?
The title goes to World of Warcraft by a landslide.
Figured it was.
Yeah, from 2004 up until probably 2012, I just didn't stop playing. I definitely have over like a year logged in that game. I've come back for every expansion, although after Wrath, pretty much it was progressively less time for each expansion. But yeah, that's and it's funny because with the state of Blizzard and everything going on and all of the just like the really disappointing news to come out about the corporate culture, but even on top like that is its own conversation, I think. But even aside from that, it definitely feels like Blizzard's just not the same company anymore. They haven't been the same company for a while. You know, a lot of the, I guess, pillars of the company that were there from the start, or you know, at least the start of some of their franchises, have all pretty much gone. And you know, if we want to tie that conversation into what the corporate culture was like and why it was like that, you could. But I just don't know. Point being, I don't know if I'm going to go back to WoW. It's like it's a very complicated thing. But then just all of that aside, the game's changed so much over the years, and I guess, you know, I've changed too. I just don't. I'm not. The appeal's not there as much anymore. So it was a gradual decline, I think, naturally, just from fatigue from playing the same game for over 7 or 8 years. And maybe that informs like why I play games the way I do now, a little bit more tasting from multiple. But yeah, I think I'm probably done with WoW. I say that, but you know, maybe I'll check out the next expansion anyways. We'll see.
Of course you will. Come on.
Is there an expansion you skip? Because I was hanging out like and watching you stream WoW. Probably it's been maybe a year or 9 months or something like that. There was a point in time where I know like you were hanging out playing it, and it was just really kind of fun to watch like you like dive into these games. Because typically my experience with your videos is the kind of the informational, like highlight reel, kind of like the real cool, and you know, like in well edited, I might say add, but the like that's just like, oh, he's Force covering this game. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, he's covering that game. Oh, that's interesting. But then you kind of got into this WoW kick, and I don't remember the date, but it was just kind of fun to watch you kind of relive that. And so the question would be then the follow up on that is, if you're unsure, like, is there something that you could see or hear that would automatically turn that into a yes? Does Blizzard, or the fact that Microsoft's acquiring them, come out and say, hey guys, we're remastering World of Warcraft and Unreal, and we're going to bring, you know, like action combat? You know, like, is there something that you're like, oh, I absolutely am in for that? You know, like, that's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, if there's something you've ever thought of.
That's a good question. I mean, I went back for Classic just because it was fun to relive like 2004, 2005 over again. And I think a lot of it also hinges on, hey, what are my friends doing? If I have a bunch of friends playing just for the sake of getting to do something with them, that's usually a reason enough for me to dive back in. But this is going to sound strange, but I think I would just be out of morbid curiosity if they ended up doing a console version for the Xbox. I would just probably want to check it out. Yeah, I've tried it before. I've done, you know, there's this whole thing where they can set up the UI, and you've got gamepad support for it with the action cam. And I've basically set up WoW as a console game. I've just tried that because you can more or less do it, and it's really not that bad. Like,
it's not that bad. But as an avid controller player who plays MMOs on controller, like it's just in that uncanny valley enough to where it's like,
well, and this is like the hacked together version, right? Because this is not like officially supported. Like, I just feel like they could do it. I think it'd be possible. I know there's a lot of skills in WoW. It's been pruned over the years, but there's still a lot of skills in WoW, and it's got the shorter GCD compared to like 14. But there are so many MMOs on console. There are so many tap target MMOs on console. I think they could pull it off if they wanted to. And with Rumble from a joypad, it's actually kind of cool. It's like a different experience. It's like, I played a lot of ESO. I'm mostly a PC gamer, but I did try the Xbox version, and it actually felt kind of good because when you have the Rumble in combat, it does add to like the feel of combat, like the literal feel of it. But
you know what Rumble is the best thing in an MMO though? Fishing.
Like,
fishing on a controller. Literally, legitimately, I don't have like I literally in like it was like Heaven's Word, had a beer, was just holding the controller and was fishing, and it would vibrate when there was a fish on the line. I literally was drinking a beer. Like, that's what I legit, like, people like, how do you level Fisher to level 60? And I was like, I think it was in Heaven's Word. I was like, well, I drank a lot and I literally just kind of took a nap, like I would if I was really fishing. And Rumble makes that possible within MMOs. And that's where that's why I wish New World had native controller support, because I feel like it could work.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I feel like that's, as long as they don't tank, I feel like that game's got to come. It's perfect for a gamepad. Yeah.
You know that in PlayStation 5, Brian, they've set up they don't really do like vibration on combat because that would be excessive, as you can imagine, right? But like on mounts, they have different vibration patterns. Oh, is that a DualSense?
It's a PS5 controller.
Yeah, it's a DualSense. Yeah.
Community bought it for me. Thank you very much, community. And
you felt it. Yeah.
Well, because they brought it to PC. They brought the PS5 feature to the PC version. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead.
So Forrest and Vulcan, think about this. Imagine like all of the mounts that you have in an MMO. Each of them have different vibration patterns to simulate the mount that you're on. And it's insane because I was like, oh, so if I get on this mount, you can feel the wings flapping. If I get on this other mount, you can feel like the wheels going through the gravel and stuff. So I was like, dude, it's crazy. The amount of work that they've went to, because there's a ton of mounts in this game. It's crazy.
It's so frustrating that exists, and then Guild Wars 2 doesn't support it at all, because the mount system in Guild Wars 2 is by far the best mount system in any MMORPG. It's like New Worlds doesn't have mounts, and I'm like, hi, talk to the Guild Wars. Like, if you're going to do this ever, look over here. Like, look at that game. They got it perfect. Vulcan, what's the longest time you've put into any one particular game, and what would make you go back to it at some point?
Man, so most time I would say probably World of Warcraft as well. Same thing.
We have a bunch of WoW Andes in here. Like,
let me tell you, 2004, 2005-ish. I think began 2005 is when I started playing, and I still play. So I check out every expansion. I play usually for like 6 months after that. But to kind of, I guess, go away from World of Warcraft, also old school RuneScape. That one, another one, probably thousands of hours into. So I think that's probably why I like New World so much, is because it resembles old school RuneScape quite a bit in terms of like skills, crafting, all that fun stuff. So, and that one I don't play too much anymore, but World of Warcraft, I still go back to. Had the same thought. Hopefully it comes to consoles, because that would be a blast. And then my friends would start playing again, because I don't play PC stuff anymore. So, yeah.
And Rory, how about you, man?
I mean, if we're just going out of time played, it's going to be World of Warcraft.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What a bunch of losers.
No, I was 39.
No pressure,
when
Brian.
I started WoW. Like, I was 39 when I started WoW. That was when Shadowlands launched. And I was like, that was like,
it's like, for me, it all started going downhill after Wrath of the Lich King, pretty much, which I guess was the same thing with Force as well. You as well, probably, right? Vulcan, after Wrath of the Lich King, it just felt like a different game. And you were asking, like, what would get you back into the game? It's like, well, for starters, I'd like to actually be able to just play the video game and have the video game not tell me that I suck for not playing it every single minute of every single hour. Like, that's always why I would end this topic. It's like, I just want to do Mythic Plus with my friends and raid. And the game's like, well, if you want to do that, then here's 20 hours of weekly chores that you have to set aside to go and do every single week. And I'm like, I'm a father of 2 kids, and I'm also a content creator, and I can't even create content around this game because whatever. And it's like, ugh. So yeah, I dropped off of Shadowlands super hard.
I feel like we can't unring that bell. I think that's kind of what I was talking about with just like how Blizzard is in general, the way they make their games, and it feels just so much more about like daily engagement is the primary focus. I don't know if they go backwards from that, at least not to their existing games. You
want to hear my theory on it? You want to hear my theory on that daily engagement and why WoW feels like people get like to that point? The same thing, the same concept with Destiny, is that those systems of daily logins and rewards, etc., they work until they don't. I think essentially there's a dopamine response, like in the human brain, that feels very satisfying, and eventually you get like callous to it in that regards, and then you need more of it. And so all of a sudden you log in, you're like, I am not getting that feeling that I'm normally getting, and now I'm getting this. I have to do all of this stuff to chase that feeling. So I think there's a chemical response within gamers' brains, but also on that line, like I'm sitting here, and that's the thing I'm worried about for New World, because it works. Like getting people to log in daily, if you're really focusing on that daily active user, like you want to get them in, you know, et cetera, and you hope that they stick around. But what ends up happening is I think eventually you start to hate it. Like it gets you going. It works on the human level, and then eventually, like there's a point where you get, and you're like, this I hate doing this. I hate doing this. Why am I doing this? And that's the problem. And so like when I look at dailies, like the fact that people call them chores, I go, I don't think that was healthy for the MMO. I think that was essentially a trick on our minds. And I would love to see the industry say, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. I think 14 does it in an interesting and better way because they expire. Like you can do your dailies and then eventually you hit a cap, and then that value is not going to, the value lowers very sharply. So I don't feel like I have to log in and do all these beast tribe quests because I've kind of finished that story. Anybody ever thought on that?
It's like the cool thing about 14 is that unlike WoW, you can get caught up and you can be done. That's the thing that is impressive. It's like they're actually comfortable with you just being done and playing another game. Like I've taken multiple breaks since I've started playing 14, and I never feel like I'm missing out because even if say, okay, I'm not going to play for like a year, and you come back and you're like, oh man, I'm going to be so out of not be able to cut up. It's like, no, you literally just buy crafted gear and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's no big long grind to get gear. There's no go grind these. You can literally just get in, buy the crafted gear, which at that point is probably going to be dirt cheap anyway. And you can go to raids. Like it's that simple. It's like, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
That's what I think when we look at this year, and that's kind of the big topic for today's show is, we look at out of 2022, we've got Lost Ark, we got Final Fantasy 14, which right now appears by all metrics seems to be the number one MMO in the world. Lost Ark surging due to the kind of the decline of WoW. Other MMOs like ESO also climbing, Guild Wars 2 climbing, and what we're seeing is almost in a weird way is an industry level reset. And so we're actually starting to see, which to my surprise is investment in the genre itself. So for example, Amazon is behind both Lost Ark and New World, and that seems very interesting. I'm very curious as y'all's thoughts, especially as they enter in the gaming scene with 2 MMORPGs. Forrest, do you have any thoughts on Amazon as what they've been doing so far with both New World and with Lost Ark on the horizon?
I think New World, it's so complicated because they have something really special with that game. I ended up playing like 100 hours pre-launch, and I didn't even touch the launch version is how it actually ended up playing out. I played across multiple betas. I had access to like a private test server as well. And then when the launch came, it was a mess, and I was just like, I'll hold off until they fix it. A couple weeks go by, I'll hold off. At this point, I'm just like, I'm going to wait till their first like major patch, which maybe will come halfway through this year, or maybe in the fall, whenever they have like a huge update. I know they have a bunch of periodic stuff. They're adding new weapons and a whole bunch of stuff. But when they get a really big update and a lot of this stuff's ironed out, and maybe once the player base settles, I think that'll be a good time for me to jump in. But they definitely did something right. 900,000 peak concurrent, set a record on Steam. Steam is huge. People really do shit on New World pretty hard, and it's definitely, like we talked about at the very beginning, like it's pales in comparison to what it started at, right? But it's still like it's blowing every other MMO that came out last year out of the water. There were like 7 launches. And everything else doesn't even come close to where they're currently kind of stabilized. So they're still going down, but they did something right. And the thing with Lost Ark, though, is it's not theirs. Like, they're publishing it, but it's not their game. I think it's certainly going to have quite a bit of success, but it's kind of strange because it's an MMO, but it's a top-down game. And in a lot of ways, those can be like 2 different player bases. Like, the people who maybe like Path of Exile and Diablo 3 aren't necessarily all the same people who like traditional MMOs, you know what I mean? So it'll be interesting. I think it'll do pretty well. But in terms of just Amazon entering the MMO space, I mean, whatever. I'll take what I can get, dude. It's so it's like you said, there does seem to be a resurgence. I think partially because like the tech is really getting there, and companies are willing to give another crack at it. Everyone's tired of battle royale and card games, and like a lot of the like hyper popular genres as they wax and wane, right? I think MMOs are making a comeback, and I'm really excited for it. I'm super pissed though that we're not going to get that Lord of the Rings MMO that Amazon was supposed to. I was so damn excited.
They have the IP in that regards, and I'm wondering if we end up seeing something down the line. That ended up being that like China basically bought that right out from under them. So it's like they had the developers working on that. And that's like interesting to see what they end up doing in the long run. You bring up an interesting point about the player population. It's been interesting for me to watch as a content creator now, but as I watch people like shit on New World. And then when you go and actually, from my perspective, I look at the numbers and it's like they're still like ranked high. Like the numbers themselves just kind of like overall have this kind of ebb and flow. And I think that like I'm wondering like, is the impact of content creation and the fact that you can do a negative New World video and it's going to do really well for you as a content creator, is that more the model, or is it just a matter of like, okay, yeah, like the population ebbs and flows, big updates bring people back. What's the retention rate on bringing people back? And when is the expansion, overall? Because it's that, I think essentially for me, what I'm looking to see is the expansion is reaffirming the promise that they say that they've got a 10-year plan. And I don't know when that happens, whether that's year 1, year 2,
They
year
said
3.
that 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They said that they're committed to New World for over 10 years. A lot of people say we're committed to a game for whatever period of time, but that most likely that always falls through. People come and say they've got like Anthem. Anthem's got a 10-year plan, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I believe it when I believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
I believe it when I see it. What do you guys think overall? Like when let's go Vulcan. Like obviously Lost Ark is going to be, it's going to have the same kind of thing. I'm just kind of watching all of this to see the same kind of stories apply, because right now 14's numbers are down because that's essentially the ebb and flow. But there's
because you can't buy it.
Yeah,
that's because you can't buy it.
It goes on sale next week. It goes back on sale next week. But outside of buying it, but like ebbs, like nobody's reporting on. I guess the whole point of the frustration and the humor in it is that I'll see even like mainstream, like Kotaku's, IGN's and stuff saying like, no one's playing Cyberpunk a month after the game's launch. Like, why is this even a part of the conversation as to the overall like active player base that we know that it has a roller coaster? Vulcan?
I think there's multiple things here. So from a New World perspective, I think it's because it's published by Amazon. I think people going into it, whether they have a negative impression of Amazon or a positive impression of it, they seem to tie that really closely to New World. And so if New World tends to do poorly, then they're more harsh on the game. If Final Fantasy does something, I'll say like negatively, or they misstep or whatever,
like they draw in some NFTs,
Yeah, exactly. And people are like, oh, you Final Fantasy, you, like everybody's fine with it. And I think that kind of ties back into how the game was managed, how, leadership and ownership of Final Fantasy has approached situations. But I'm not entirely sure why there's so much like ire towards Amazon publishing a game. I mean, it's not like they've had like raving success and then all of a sudden they've just like tanked their entire gaming studio. I mean, look, they had originally they bought like half of the WildStar studio of Carbine and they put them on a project, and then that tanked and they canceled that. Then they released Crucible and that was terrible. So then they kind of unreleased it and then canceled it. And then, they released New World and that's changed over the years. So it's not like they've had a ton of success and suddenly they're doing things poorly. They've always seemed to kind of do things sort of like they're kind of wandering through the darkness. So, but like Force said, this is a game that has a special thing to it, right? It's kind of in a genre by itself in terms of like theme, because you're kind of like these like pioneers in a supernatural island rather than like high fantasy or like Souls-like. But getting to your second question of Lost Ark, I think we're going to see the same thing. But Lost Ark, again, is kind of in a weird situation because it's technically been available since like 2019, 2018. So you have people that have been playing it for years, and then they're going to continue playing it just in their native language on the Western thing. So I think we're going to see a lot of people jump in. It's going to go down again, but I think that one's going to be a little bit more predictable, and people are not going to be as hard on it because they know what they're getting, right? It's like, oh, we've seen videos from Saiwo for 2 years, from Saint Tone for 2 years. So we know what we're going to be walking into, and we're going to either enjoy it or hate it based on the videos. So I don't know. I think it's just kind of the natural progression of the industry, to be honest. People are going to jump in, they're going to like it, they're going to hate it, they're going to leave.
I think that's the funny thing about like the narrative about every single game. Most games peak at launch and then drop off. It is a rare exception. You look like Fortnite is an exception. It didn't peak at launch, right? Everyone knows that. But pretty much every other game peaks at launch. And then if it's supported properly and it's a really good game, over the long term, it'll continue to grow. But a majority of games are not the case. And it's just like, I guess it's just a matter of people. I mean, people want to feel like they're invested in playing something that's successful and that's going to last long term, especially the people who just want to play one game for an extended period of time. You don't want to feel like you're playing the game that everyone's leaving, right? It's just crazy. And then it's also funny because I've thought about this and I've caught myself doing it. You talk about like how Final Fantasy 14, people are just like, oh, you guys, whatever, you know, because but there's a feeling of goodwill towards them that would definitely not be extended across the board. If any other game was having login issues a month after an expansion launch, people would be dumping on it nonstop. But I do it myself. I'm like, Final Fantasy 14, congratulations. Like, you guys are so popular.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy.
You did it. You outpaced physical hardware supply.
Like, I cannot imagine. I think about like so many launches of Blizzard products, any of the WoW expansions, or like when Diablo 3 launched and the servers were shit for a week and everyone was losing their minds, and rightfully so. You know what I mean? There's multiple reasons. Like, why isn't this game just available offline? You can't say that for MMOs, but it's just, yeah, it is funny. There is definitely a double standard.
I call it good game armor.
Right.
Yeah.
We look at plot armor. Yeah, like plot armor, but good game armor is that, like, when you look at what like with WoW and kind of like these moments, I always say the person how I feel for in the whole like crisis, obviously the people who like were abused and suffered over Blizzard, but essentially when I look at the content creator perspective, is that, or the player's perspective, like, if all of that comes out and you're still playing it and then they come out with a patch and then it's like, oh, they nerfed this class, I'm done with the game. Like, you've been okay with all of this stuff. And then that was kind of the straw that like breaks your back. So there's like these weird relationships. And I think that with WoW, like all the stuff that came out about Activision Blizzard was due to continual growing frustration with the game itself. If the game was good, if you're trying to talk bad about like, hey guys, there's real stuff going on over at Blizzard, it's not good. Hey man, like, I don't want to hear it. Like, this is my game. Like, this is what I escaped from my crappy boss, you know, and this is what I do. Like, I don't want to hear it, but it's like, no man, this game sucks. And they did what? Let's get them. You know, it's like this weird, this perspective within gaming. Now, Rory, we're talking obviously about looking at 2022, and we've talked about New World and Lost Ark, but like, you just are experiencing obviously some like excitement with Monster Hunter Rise, not technically an MMO, but in and of itself. You've also alluded to Elden Ring, not technically an MMO, but as you look at 2022, well, it's MMO-ish, you know.
Shared
you
world.
look out, you know, at this year in and of itself, like, do you feel like as a player of WoW, of 14, and as you look towards the like 2022, have you seen like do you feel like there's been that shift that Force kind of hinted at a resurgence of the genre, as opposed to like, we're not seeing a Fortnite spike? You know, I don't think we'll see that anytime soon.
It was a perfect storm, because you have the situation where, like you said, Shadowlands was not a good expansion. On top of it, you have all of this scandalous stuff that is happening with Blizzard. So a lot of players, in part because they're sick of the game, and in another part because they're also now exposed that all of the horrible stuff that has been happening in Blizzard headquarters, which, if you look at it from a perspective of like people that have been Blizzard fans for such a long time as some of us, like this stuff we look at and we're like, dude, what the hell? You were supposed to be like the chosen ones almost, because you were called the PC darling for the longest time, because your games would come out when they were ready. And they would be like super polished and all of this stuff. Now, not only the games suck, but on top of it, we've come to find out all of this horrible stuff behind it. And a lot of people stopped supporting Blizzard. When they stopped supporting Blizzard, most of them first took a break and like played other random games. And then eventually they started looking for another MMO to play. Now, a huge chunk of them ended up coming to Final Fantasy 14. I mean, I came in a little bit earlier in 2019 because I stopped at BFA. I was like, dude, this is hot garbage. I can't take this anymore. I did play a little bit of Shadowlands just to see if it was changed. It's like, no, this is the same hot garbage. I'm not going to deal with this. But other people were like, yeah, 14 is not for me. There's too much story. So that's why you also saw Resurgence in Guild Wars 2. I myself played a decent chunk of Guild Wars 2 a couple of months back. And I liked it so much that I bought the expansion. I don't even know when I'm going to be able to play like End of Dragons or whatever it's called, but I know that I'll eventually play it. And I was like, hey man, this is worth it. Cause like this game deserves my money, because for starters, they didn't even charge you like a monthly fee. You can buy some stuff on the store or whatever, but it's like for, I think it was $50 ever. I was just like, I'll just buy all the expansions and the new one that's coming for like $50, and I get all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, fine, sure. Yeah, take some money off me. And a lot of people have been diving into Guild Wars 2 as well. A lot of people dove into ESO, which I also bought ESO. It was like cheap on Steam. And I'm like, sure, I'll buy that one too, whatever.
Throw it in the cart.
Yeah, it's just like I'll just buy all of these other MMOs. And I checked out ESO, and I was like, see, ESO, I didn't like the combat and the animations and all that, but the point is everybody started funneling to different MMOs, and you started seeing a resurgence from there. But then on top of it, it also, I think it was kind of a coincidence, you also have New World coming out, and you also have Lost Ark coming out, and all of that stuff at the same time. And that, yeah, has revived the interest of MMOs. And now there's probably a bunch of companies trying to, oh man, we gotta get back to work on that MMO we were supposed to be working on like 8 years ago when MMOs were like the hot new thing. We gotta revive that project and bring it back. But also towards the thing that you guys were talking about, New World, which is like, you know, you guys saying this game has something. New World has something. It's the moment-to-moment gameplay is incredibly immersive. It's fantastic. Like that, there's a reason why a lot of people just like, oh, dude, I just love chopping trees in this game. Like you don't even get that much for it. You get the wood, and that's it. But it feels really good.
Oh, you should flag for PvP, because then you increase that luck and you can get some really cool stuff from chopping trees, man.
Fishing.
I've never been more immersed. Like, well, I won't say never, but being in a town, right, and there's people around you, and hearing the ting of someone mining a node just outside of town, and just knowing it's another player, it's just so cool. And you know what's funny? I think like they initially put in those systems when the game in its earlier stages, when it was just like hardcore PvP across the board, and the idea was like if someone's mining, you hear them from like a mile away. But even though they kept that element in, and it's not quite the same game anymore, I think it's just so good. It feels so good being in that world. Like the time that I did play, all the pre-launch time I put in, I had a really, really good time. It's just a shame that they had so many issues with bugs and exploits, and just that their end game didn't hold up, which, you know, mind you, that's a critical part of an MMO, but I had fun with the slice that I did play, and I am looking forward. I am going to go back next year, because like you said, Rurikon, there are some really cool elements to it. You know what I mean? So
definitely,
it's I know exactly what you mean, and it's like one of the reasons why I popped out of it was because I was having a lot of fun when I was basically like doing all of my own things. So instead, you know how some players will go to like the market board or whatever it's called in that game, and they're just like, oh, I'm going to buy the best tool for my level. I was having a lot of fun leveling out the different professions that I could do in order to craft my own tools and craft my own things. And that aspect of it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm kind of like surviving, living off the land, doing all of these neat things. And then I reached the point where basically I would spend like, I don't know, 10 hours grinding to get like 1 point. And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cooler if you would limit each player to be able to level like, say, 2 of these professions, but they were a lot easier to level? Because I stopped playing because of that, because I was no longer able to, in a reasonable time frame, craft my own tools and continue to have my own fun. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to the auction house and buy these things, because that's not as fun to me as it was just experiencing the thing the way that I was experiencing it. And I just burned out because of the fact that I then watched like an Asmongold video or whatever. It said, you need to craft 5,000 something woolen shirts. And I was like, what? You're crazy. That's insane.
Please no.
Okay, what is happening?
It was just like an insane amount of grind. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't think I'm doing that. Like, I love this. I love the moment to moment, but I'm still not going to sit here for like 1,000,000 hours and whatever.
And the thing too that they did, I think is kind of interesting, is they've added the aptitude system to crafting. So that way, after you're at 200, you can even like invest even more time into it. to then unlock these little like chests,
Blueprints.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, again, that's crazy. I have a guy on my Steam friends list who's been playing nonstop since launch, and it's funny. I'll see his achievement pop up: 200 in mining, 200 in fishing, and I look at his thing, and it's like 600, 700 hours played, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the first MMO I've ever played." And I was like, "Wow,
that's actually a really good review from somebody who's like, I've never played MMOs, and all of a sudden, you get sucked into that." One of the things I really, yeah. One of the things I'm very curious, because like when you talk about Diablo, we've had this debate. I continue to say it at the beginning. My definition of 14 is it's a Final Fantasy game that is built on top of an MMO. It sits on top of that, and so people often like challenge me. They're like, "Oh, Brian, this is an MMO," and it's like, what part of a 4-man instant raid is an MMO? Well, like Fortnite has more players than what you would experience within that. Like, is Fortnite an MMO? I wouldn't classify it as that. But we have to look and see, like, as the genre itself has changed over time, and so as the players have changed over time. And that's where like New World for me like reminds me of my roots, Final Fantasy 11, and the nostalgia. Like when you bring up the sound, for me, it takes me back to being a kid in East Texas and Nacogdoches, like with a lot of the tall trees and just had the scenery. And so like immediately, like a nostalgia like light switch flips in my mind. I'm like, oh man, this is like my childhood. And not that I was a lumberjack, but that's the university out there. SFA, let's go lumberjack.
Let's go.
Hack some jacks. But so it's like there's like these weird like ways that we connect. But one of the things that New World sets a new question in my mind, and we've talked about it with New World, Lost Ark, with the exception of World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, but we've mentioned ESO, Blue Protocol, Phantasy Star Online 2, and we just keep going down this list. One of the things that these games all have in common is either no sub or an optional sub to the model itself. And the fact that these games are starting to come out, Blue Protocol is one of the curiosity pieces of it, is that it's coming out with it's as a free-to-play no sub, Lost Ark free-to-play no sub, New World buy-to-play. Like, as the model's changing, like, do we see the future of MMORPGs actually maintaining their own subscription fee in lieu of something like Game Pass being out there in the wild?
I think
it's
go ahead. Anybody, yeah.
Go ahead, Rory.
Okay, so I think that the situation here is that you need to be established. So like World of Warcraft was able to put in a subscription fee because they were kind of like the first ones to simplify the MMO down to a level where it reached the significant mass appeal and obviously critical mass. Final Fantasy 14 came in at a time where they were still able to implement that as well. But I feel like newcomers to the genre, it's going to be very hard for them to just be like, oh yeah, we need you to pay a subscription fee up front. And you're going to be like, but is your game any good? It's like you're going to have to prove yourself, especially when you have games like Guild Wars 2 that don't require a sub. And there's a couple of more, like obviously now you also have New World. Lost Ark is now going to require a sub. I mean, even Warframe, it's more of like a 4-player co-op, but most people consider it an MMO. Also doesn't require a sub, has thousands, maybe even millions of hours of content, right? And it's like it's very hard for someone new to come into the even if it's like an established company to come in and say, no, you need to pay us a subscription fee because of this, right? It's going to be hard. So I think that a lot of people are going to come in with the buy to play model with stores. That's what we're going to see a lot of, and obviously also free to play with a more aggressive store maybe than the buy to play model or something like that.
Yeah. And so a few weeks ago, I interviewed a developer that was developing an MMO, upcoming one called Scars of Honor. And it's very reminiscent of early WoW, but it's kind of a take on the classic experience of MMOs. But that was one of the questions I asked as well is, how do you plan to monetize it going forward? And we had a pretty long conversation about subscription versus free to play versus buy to play. And his mentality was kind of like what Rory is saying is you need to have people in the game to actually experience what they're going to pay for, right? We're kind of gone with the days of, oh, well, I'll pay for a month or I'll get a month free, and I'll check it out and then I'll subscribe later. So he's like, we're just going to do free to play. We're going to have a cash shop that is has, a couple of different like skins in it, but that's it. He's like my job he's like the studio CEO. He goes, my job is to secure funding and do fundraising to kind of keep the game going and kind of fund future enhancements and stuff like that until we're at a point where we can either expand our shop, go buy to play, or charge an optional subscription down the road. So it was kind of very interesting seeing his approach and kind of his mentality of here's how to develop like an MMO in today's society. So I think, Rory, you're probably right on the dot there.
Yeah, I don't expect to see any MMO launch and be successful going with a sub model, except like maybe the one exception in the foreseeable future of games we know about. Maybe Riot can get away with it. But if anything, I think it's a lot more plausible that they just do a season pass, because it's basically just a subscription. It's basically just a monthly subscription broken up into whatever, like 3 months at a time, just called something else. And people feel like, oh, this is worth it because look at all of the currencies I'm getting, the resources I'm getting, the skins I'm getting, whatever it is. It's not just like $15 thrown into the ether because like, oh, they need to run their servers or something. You feel like you're getting something for it, and it works, right? That's why that's why freaking every FPS game has a monthly sub now, basically. You know what I mean? Battle passes are just everywhere. So I feel like that's like a lot more plausible, honestly.
I see the future.
You're right.
Go ahead.
Competition. I was just gonna say, like, there's way too much competition, and like, how are you gonna go up against the behemoth MMOs out there trying to charge a sub fee? Like, people are gonna be like, for what? Why? I'll just play 14. I'll play ESO.
I'll play where my friends are already, where I'm comfortable. Yep. 14 being a game that's also on console and PC, and I want to get around to that question here in a second, but I think you hit it right out of the park. I think the future is the battle pass. In fact, 14 is actually introducing their own battle pass in the next patch. That I was like, all right, that's gonna be interesting to see how it makes me feel. Because my issue with the battle pass is the expiration, and I hope that I know Halo's got problems with their battle pass right now. But I love that it doesn't expire. I have no problem buying it, and especially in an RPG, like that's what really I get frustrated at Destiny, and so I don't even play. Like it's same thing with it's the Majora's Mask syndrome with me. Like, oh, you put a timer on me? Like, I don't think I'm ready for that kind of commitment. Like, I've got kids, I've got life, man. I got to do other things, and so now I feel like there's this clock, and now I'm feeling like that pressure. I'll just pass. I'll just go play something that doesn't put that pressure on me because there is so much competition, there is so much choice, and I think that the battle pass ends up being it. My hope for it within the MMOs is they figure out you buy it. You can, and you just equip it, and then that becomes your new grind that you can go work on whenever you want, and it doesn't expire. And oh, there's a new one out, you can go grind on that one too. And essentially, from a sales perspective, you think about it like, oh, it's been a year, and we had 4 seasons, 4 battle passes or whatever. We can bundle those up and sell them to you, and then you coming into the game 3 years later, you're like, oh, let me just buy up all the classic, seasons that I missed because I'm having a great time, and all of a sudden that becomes another revenue perspective. What do you think about? Go ahead.
I was just one more thing on that. I was going to say, even if it's not like explicitly a battle pass, there are so many things that they can do that are some variation of that are essentially a subscription, but they give you something. Like, for example, ESO has ESO Plus, which anyone who actively plays the game will buy literally solely because you get that bottomless crafting bag. Basically, they build up this thing where they give you like 10,000 different craft items that you have to carry in your inventory of only like a couple hundred slots. Or if you give us this payment, you have a bottomless bag for all your crafting stuff. So battle pass or something like the ESO Plus model is just a subscription and everything but name, really.
Yeah, everything but name and optional, so that people get in, they can test the game, they can touch the game, they can take breaks from the game, and then they can come back. But they don't, like, if in order to log into 14, you have to like swipe the credit card. You have to pay if you're coming back. So you can't even come and say like, hey, I want to check out the changes. I haven't bought Endwalker yet. I don't know if I'm going to want to get into it. It's like, yeah, you should. It'd be really cool to just be able to hop into the game, be able to test things out. And then essentially, you want to buy Endwalker, bada bing, bada boom. NFTs. Square Enix said that it's going to be a big thing. And we've been talking about Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, no.
Gotta get the clickable titles, guys.
Oh man.
Okay.
Force endorses NFTs in video games. Like,
Wait, what?
He does.
I don't think that's true.
8 question marks after it.
Whatever.
How
Clickbait
how Brian
menu, I
how
don't give a shit. Go ahead. If you were like, I knew that guy was a scumbag.
at some point, like as you grow, like as a content creator, it's like, oh, we're so excited you're growing, and then all of a sudden, it's like he's getting too big. We got it. We got to humble him somehow.
Yeah.
Love it.
They grow.
Got to
like,
bring him
grow-
back down. It's
humble
like
you.
with the NFTs, I've been extremely public about my absolute disdain for NFTs, mostly because NFTs are basically scams at this point, and I don't see it ever changing because there's nothing that the technology enables that you can't do right now without NFTs. It just has the added benefit that it also more harmful for the environment than if you were not to use them. That's pretty much what NFTs do, because ultimately, when a lot of people they see all this stuff about, oh, but I'm buying this item in this game, and it's like, no, if you read the fine print, what you're buying is a database entry in the blockchain that has a unique code that somehow connects to this item over here in this game. And if this game ever goes down, your item's gone forever. And you still own the database entry in the blockchain, though. So there's that. And you can sell that to somebody, to the database entry for an item that doesn't exist in a game that's dead. But go ahead, you do you. I mean, that's just in video games, because obviously there's way more egregious things. Like now you have NFT profile pictures on Twitter, and I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say for me, it's same thing, right? NFTs in the gaming industry, no. Like play to earn, I see is everywhere. Oh yeah, woo. Now, like that's just yeah, you're selling the same experience that you're getting right now. Say the only NFT, I own one NFT, and and it's for a card game.
Show.
I know I know I don't play Monster Hunter, and I own an NFT. What am I even doing here? So it's for a card game called MetaZoo, and it's actual physical cards. But being a NFT holder, like one of like 2,000 or whatever, it's like a VIP pass or a backstage pass, right? So it's like, oh hey, because you own one of these, you get access to the products earlier, you can purchase them earlier, you can do all these things, and to me the value is there, so I own it. But in gaming, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially right now.
I've talked about it a little bit on some of my content and online. I feel like in general, I still don't know quite enough about NFTs to have a super informed opinion on them. Like, understand the basic fundamentals. I understand it's like basically have a receipt tied to the blockchain that says you own this digital item, right? My biggest issue with the way it's being spun when it comes to adding it to gaming is this perception that it's like valuable to us as players, and that instead of just grinding for 1,000 hours to get my Hand of Ragnaros and WoW, I can have this NFT of the Hand of Rag, and then I could presumably sell it to another player. It's like, okay, well, first of all, I sold decked out geared WoW characters already in the past. I did it on eBay back in the original vanilla WoW days, so it's not like I needed NFTs for that to happen necessarily. But then also, there seems to be this conversation around how this is better for the players because this is going to be their method of funding, right? They say that, hey, we're going to put NFTs in our game to help sustain the game's development over the long term. But this seems to be operating under the idea that like all the other shit's going away. Like, we're not going to charge a box price anymore. We're not going to have microtransactions. There won't be a season pass or a cash shop. It's like, that no. I think that's where a lot of the frustration has been coming from the gaming community, because we realize this is just like it doesn't function like a loot box, but it's like the next loot box. You know what I mean? That it's like, here's another way for them to monetize their games, and it's just getting thrown into the mix. It's not eliminating that. They're not going to stop the box price. They're not going to stop the cash shop, or so it's just like so frustration. It's so frustrating to see that's where the conversation has been going, because I just think it's disingenuous that is the reality of what the industry will do if NFTs do take off, and if there's like acceptance enough that so many companies feel like they can put it in their games.
Some of the questions around it, I'm not seeing or hearing other people talk about or being asked, and that's actually kind of what concerns me. Let's say from a content creation reviewer perspective, right? Now you have NFTs in the game, and you're talking about it, right? Like, what level of this disclosure is going to be needed, right? Let's say they, did bring in NFTs to 14. Let's say my legacy status is like where I have a reduced subscription fee. I've got all these extra bonuses because I'm legacy. Imagine that being an NFT that I could sell. Like at some point, like I'm sure somebody coming into today would be like, I'd pay for that, or et cetera. So just for example purposes, like what level of like disclosure do I owe somebody who's watching a video or reading a review or listening to my opinion? How influenced is my opinion on the value of the assets that I quote unquote own in a game, whether it's persistent or even in any other kind of game? So the pay to earn mindset, I think one of the things I haven't even seen brought up in the conversation, I've seen in the environment, I've seen the pay to earn concerns, but I don't see the influencer concerns. And I don't like the word influencer, but that's just, I'm using that more in generic terms, because like that's people like, oh, you're an influencer. I was like, oh, I feel dirty when you say that. But the idea is that like I'm actively playing and evangelizing the games that I love, right? And I would hopefully not be swayed by like a financial return on, I play a game, I own NFT. Oh, I hype game up, I sell NFT, I profit, right? Like that's the mindset that I know that there are, and we all know there are people in the content creation space that aren't in it for the most, like, I guess, pure reasons from a gaming perspective. I think, authenticity is a very big, important thing within gaming. Honesty is a very big, important thing among gamers. But there are those that, there's always going to be bad actors. And so when it comes down to like even traditional media reviews, when it comes down to, user generated content and things like that within the content creation space, I do wonder like what level of impact will that have on, like actually like giving real honest opinions about a game? Because even within like just legacy media, that when you get called into an office and they say, hey, so-and-so heard you talking smack about them, they are a big sponsor. We're not telling you can't talk bad about that person, but that conversation alone, that knowing how, all these reporters that I hear that are no longer reporters, they talk about how that influence, no matter what, changes. Even if you're actively trying not to have it change you, like there's still always that hanging over that influence. Do you have any take on my thoughts there?
To me, it all has to be with the relationship that each influencer has with their community. And I've already seen influencers basically taking advantage of their community and quick and dump schemes for stocks and stuff like that before the NFT craze went live. I am actively seeing certain other content creators essentially exploit their communities by selling them NFTs right now. And it's like, look, some content creators are going to do it because they don't give a crap. Some content creators are not going to do it. To me, the most important thing is always be super transparent about any skin that you have in the game. Like whenever I talk about Monster Hunter, for instance, I've already told people, listen, whenever I do a review to Monster Hunter, at the start of the review, the first thing that I say is, I'm biased towards this game because I love this game. So it's like, this is just the fact. It has nothing to do with the fact that I got like a code from Capcom, which I do get, and I also disclose that. But it's like, I just like this game. Whether I would have bought it or not, I'm probably going to speak well about this game because I like it. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, if Capcom ever puts out a Monster Hunter game that I don't like, I'm also going to say I don't like it. I think it's trash. And, and nothing, and I've always been very straightforward to pretty much any entity that I have dealings with, where it's like, listen, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And if you ever don't like it, then that's up to you. And if you don't want to work with me, that's up to you. And it is what it is. And I've had some people don't work with me anymore. It's like, hey, I don't care. It is what it is. To me, the most important thing is I always try to remain true to the community. And with the NFT stuff, I'm not even concerned because I've already said, look, I got a huge backlog of games to talk about. So if the future of games is NFTs, then sign me out. I'm not going to to everybody. I'm going to like, listen, I got to play Guild Wars 2. I haven't finished Persona 5. I don't mind. I want to replay Xenoblade Chronicles. Like, dude, I got plenty of stuff to play until I'm dead in the ground. So I don't care about NFTs. There's plenty of games out there. That's my take on that. But again, the important thing is always like being transparent. So like, for instance, I got to review PlayStation 5 early because Portugal, there's less competition between content creators, and I was given a PlayStation 5. I was lucky enough. But I reviewed the PlayStation. I said, hey, listen, there's some problems in here. If you compare it with the Xbox and the what do they call that technology where they just like update all of the games to the latest version and they have backwards compatibility? I forget. Whatever, they have that thing where you put in like smart delivery.
Smart delivery, yeah, that's right.
And I was like, listen, they have a really cool thing with smart delivery on the Xbox, and on the PlayStation side, for instance, I put in this code that they gave me from Sony, and it installed the PS4 version and the PS5 version of Spider-Man. Why the hell do I want the PS4 version installed? Doesn't make any sense, but it happened. It's all about always being transparent. That's the way that I look at it, and that's the way that I'm going to continue doing things. But this demands that everybody knows the people that they are dealing with, which it is what it is.
Yeah. And I would echo that. And I think right now, just in terms of the industry, society, we're shifting away from, celebrity influence, and we're shifting deeper and deeper and deeper into content creator, Twitch streamers, YouTube streamers, them being influential. We've talked about it before, but people come home and they don't turn on, a TV show anymore. They turn on their favorite streamer and they watch them. And so you're starting to see more and more, whether it's companies, whether it's brand deals, anything like that, target those individuals instead, right? And those who can be bought, or you give them something that they enjoy playing, and people do feel that pressure, right, to speak highly about something because I was selected, and I want to make sure I have future opportunities, so I'm going to speak highly to it. And we're seeing the same thing with NFTs. I've seen some esports organizations and things like that all of a sudden incorporate a ton of NFTs and then like hype them up, and then it's almost like a pump and dump type thing, just like we had with Dogecoin. So these are the things that we're seeing, and it's kind of crazy. It's like, okay, why you used to post all of these clips about like, oh man, this like sick like clutch play at the end, 1v4, and now it's, hey man, check out my Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, and you should go buy a bunch of these. And it's like it's tough to see, and I think it's just pushing us down a road that is not going to end well. So yeah, it's hard.
Or you got any final thoughts on that one?
Like the ethical part of NFTs and content creators, I guess it really just, it's funny because there's just so many different types of content creators. This really only applies to like reviewers or people along those lines, reviewers, maybe pundit style content creators. But I mean, just look at the prevalence of like creator codes or something, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you got a creator code for Fortnite. Like, how much shit talking are you going to do about Fortnite? But on the other hand, like, not everyone's trying to be a reviewer, you know what I mean? There's so many content creators out here just like, watch me like make funny noises and have a good time with my friends, and here's my creator code, and also here's my NFT. If you guys want to ask your mom for the card, you can go buy it. But yeah, but specifically, yeah, I mean, if there are any people who purport to be reviewers, they probably shouldn't be. Do you just not talk about NFTs? I guess, what do you do?
It's like, I'm just wondering, because it, like, in terms of like the legal ramifications, if somebody was like, hey, we want to sponsor your podcast, like, I say, hey, this is sponsored, like, this is part of the whatever this message is being paid for, right? Because there's bad stuff, and NFT isn't technically like a sponsor, and so there's like, I'm wondering if we'll end up seeing something down the road, but it's going to take it'll be like the house will have burned down, the next house over will have burned down before somebody's like, oh, there's a real weird problem going on right here, all these people are getting scammed by these like so-called like reviewers or things of that, and I think it could also
be like the early days of YouTube when people didn't necessarily disclose their sponsorships, you know what I mean? Maybe it might just take some time until eventually some legislation comes through. They're like, hey, you know what, no, you have to say if you're involved in this NFT that you're talking about, because there is some, I guess it's I don't know, it's weird though. Is that different necessarily than like okay, I don't, but let's say I owned Activision Blizzard stock, and then I'm a YouTube creator who talks positively about Activision Blizzard games. Like,
You're supposed
maybe
to
that's too
disclose
far
that.
removed. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sure you are, but I don't remember the last time I heard anyone on YouTube tell me what their investment portfolio was like.
Well, and for me, like on that note, like I don't know if I own Activision Blizzard, but it's also I usually just talk bad about them anyway. The reason I don't know is because I have my investments are handled elsewhere. Like it's like, okay, you are good at investing. Here is money for retirement. I want to like not to work at some point. It's like I would want to log in and not have to worry about people like subscribing, because like I'm not a full-time content creator. I'm like, I go to work and then I come home and I make a video and then I go to bed, or play with the kid. Play the kids, go to bed. And it's like, yeah, like I like at some point, like my retirement, but like I enjoy making content. Maybe that's the point where it's like I gotta sit back and be like, all right, whether you like sub or don't, like I don't ever want to be like reliant on that. I never.
What you don't know is that your financial advisor is watching your videos and
God.
only investing in what you talk about.
Oh no! Is that illegal?
He's driving up the stock.
That's how I go viral.
Yes.
Like dad YouTuber goes to jail for like embezzlement. I didn't know.
This is your chance.
Your stock guy basically bought the Blizzard dip, dude, and now you're a freaking millionaire because Microsoft.
I don't have that much money, like actually in retirement, so it's like we've been funding it. I've been funding retirement since 20, but as much as when I look at having like 5 kids and I have them in private school, like I'm gonna be programming until I die.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's go, guys. Yeah. So the Force, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
YouTube.com/ForceGamingYT. That's pretty much it. I used to stream, but it's too much. Streaming's too hard, dude. I don't know how people do it. I just want to make YouTube videos. Streaming's exhausting.
I'm the same boat.
My voice.
Yeah, I've been streaming on Fridays, and it's like January's an evaluation. It's like, all right, it's hard. It's hard work, man. I don't know how those people do it. Rurikon, where can people find you?
You can find me on youtube.com/Rurikon or twitch.tv/Rurikon. I stream and make videos on both because I'm crazy. But yeah.
What a Chad. Wow.
Oh, man.
Let's get the chin. And Vulcan, how about you? Where can people find you?
youtube.com/Vulcan ARPG. So same thing. Yeah, I don't stream. Like Force said, it's tough. Like, oh man, I try and yeah, it's just not for me. So I make YouTube videos and have a good time. So
fantastic.
Guys, I'm so happy that both of them said streaming is very hard. So that whenever I complain about it, listen, these two, they just said it's hard. Okay, this is hard. It's not easy.
You don't just go live and things happen. Like it's
exactly.
Maybe that's my problem. I hit go live. What's going to happen today? We'll find out. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks everybody for being us with the live show. I really appreciate y'all. Typically we do an after show, but like I was talking about with real world and work, I actually got to go to some of that right now. So thank you all for listening. Thanks for being here. And thanks to all of my wonderful guests for this show. Hopefully you have a fantastic day and take care.